All right, y'all. Welcome back to the Melanin Margin. I'm your host, Quaviondre Williams,
And I'm Daquon Wilson.
and this is a talk show dedicated to bringing the marginalized to the spotlight and uplift the Black voices that will no longer stay silent. So let's go ahead and get into it. I believe this episode speaks for itself, so just go ahead and start, Daquon.
Yeah, so George Perry Floyd Jr. was an African American man that was killed during an arrest on March 25th, 2020, after a store clerk alleged he had passed a counterfeit $20 bill in Minneapolis. A white police officer named Derek Chauvin knelt on Floyd's neck for a period initially reported to be 8 minutes and 46 seconds.
Breonna Taylor, a 26-year-old African American woman, was fatally shot in her Louisville, Kentucky apartment on March 13, 2020, when white plainclothes police officers forced entry into her apartment as an investigation into drug dealers.
April 18th, 2020, police officer Jason Fletcher shot and killed Stephen Taylor. A security guard at the San Leandro Walmart southeast of Oakland called 911 after Taylor tried to leave the store with a baseball bat and a tent without paying. The statement said in disturbing cell phone and body camera video of the encounter, Taylor can be seen standing in the store's checkout area when Fletcher approaches him and tries unsuccessfully to take the bat. Taylor backs up several feet, bat in hand, and Fletcher tells him to drop it, which he doesn't. From a distance, roughly 17 feet, according to the DA's statement, Fletcher drew a stun gun, then fired as Taylor moved towards him. The prosecutor's office said Taylor was clearly in shock after he was stunned and struggled to remain standing with the bat pointed towards the ground. In the video, customers can be heard shouting, put it down," before Fletcher opened fire, striking Taylor in the chest. In the video, Taylor then tosses the bat to the floor, and walks a few feet before collapsing. He was pronounced dead at the scene.
Aiden Ellison, 19, November 23rd, 2020. At about 4 a.m. on the day of the shooting, Keegan was awakened by loud music in the parking lot of the Stanford Inn where he was staying. He asked Ellison to turn the music down, and Ellison refused. The report said Keegan got dressed, grabbed a semi-automatic handgun, and went to the hotel's front desk to complain to a clerk, according to the affidavit. While the clerk was speaking with Ellison in the parking lot, Keegan came to the parking lot and confronted the teenager, according to the report. Ellison and Keegan argued, and Keegan said Ellison punched him in the face several times, according to the report. Keegan shot Ellison once, striking him in the chest, the affidavit said. An autopsy revealed no injuries to Ellison's hands that would be indicative of him punching Keegan. The arresting officer said in the report that Keegan had no visible injuries on his face.
Wow. Four instances of police brutality. Let's just take a moment to think about that. All of this happened this year, so many more that's also happened that we just don't have the time to talk about. So let's just start off with our discussion of how has police brutality affected you? Are you angry, scared, frustrated? How do you feel?
I mean, even coming into this episode, I had an idea of where I wanted to go, what I wanted to say, and how I was going to react to it. And just reading what happened and seeing all of this, it's so difficult to know that this is 2020. I mean, stuff like this, it feels like it should be so far in the past. It feels like this should be so way, way deep in the catacombs that it just happened a long time ago in slavery and whatever the case may be and all this other stuff that people want to keep saying. And this is 2020.
Right.
And this stuff is still happening. I'm furious. I'm angry. I'm all of the above right now. My feelings right now are just overwhelmed, especially at a 19-year-old playing loud music, and he is dead. He is deceased, no longer living. I remember being 19 years old.
Right.
There's no words. Daquon, there's no words. And I'm laughing at just the craziness of all of this right now. And you know what's so crazy about this, Daquon? The thing that makes me the most upset about this whole situation is that when you sent me that post about Aiden Ellison, it didn't surprise me.
Not at all.
That's what scared me.
Right. When I read it, I remember feeling this emptiness inside. Like, I felt so much that I didn't feel anything at all, if that makes sense. Like, it's this story that we've seen time after time after time again of people having blatant disregard towards Black bodies. And just this idea that even in 2020, us trying to call out for our humanity as Black people is seen as some type of political statement. My life is a political statement. Like, it is politics for me just to live and survive in this country. And that is the crazy part about it, that I cannot just be.
And it's just hearing these stories. I mean, especially Breonna Taylor's. I mean, all of them, but Breonna Taylor's. I mean, she was in her home,
right,
asleep. I mean, I can't imagine being in my bed and just suddenly being shot to death. Like, I mean, the thought is just, it's like we're taught since we were kids that police officers are here to serve and protect all of us. They are here to stop the bad guys. That's what we're taught as
right,
children. And as we become adults, as Black people, as we step into our own in this world and see the reality that we're not being protected, our lives don't matter. And that is just, it's just overwhelming to think about, because I'm so afraid every day. There's always a thought in the back of my mind, like, what if this is the day I get pulled over?
mm-hmm.
What if this is the day that something happens in my neighborhood and they just start kicking in doors?
Ooh, yeah.
What do I do? How do I protect? Who do I call? You know, the things like that go through our mind consistently, over and over again, all day, every day sometimes. And especially now in the scare, and even to put insult to injury, these are just the things that are reported.
Right. So many
These
go
are just the
unreported.
These are just the stories that are reported, Daquon, not all the ones that have happened.
Mm-hmm.
I'm certain there are so many people out there who are not hashtags, who their stories have been swept under the rugs by the DAs, the police officers, the police department. I feared for my life. Always the same excuse.
Right. You fear for your life, but you don't recognize that Black people have to fear for their lives every day for just existing.
As a Black person.
Yeah, like I remember this year in the midst of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, I remember that when I was living in Atlanta, my apartment complex let police into my apartment while neither me and my roommate were there. And they searched through our apartment and my roommate found their stuff being searched through. And it was a situation where the police came because of like a health and safety check. And basically the police was like, if you don't let us into this apartment, we will kick the door down and enter regardless. And I remember just like living in that apartment afterwards, just thinking that at any moment, police could just like kick down my door and enter. And like hearing Breonna Taylor's story was, it was so hard to live at that apartment then. It was basically unlivable to just like try to exist in a space where, as I fell asleep at night, I did not know whether there would be another instance of the police coming to my door and knocking it down. And then that would be me. And then to have to deal with apartment complex manager that did not seem to care about the situation at all was entirely gaslighting. And just that idea that you can't, like, in the midst of everything that is happening with each and every story that comes out, you can't see what's blatantly right in front of you.
I totally agree. I mean, growing up, I've only had one situation that I can recall that I've had police officers like in my space. And me and my family were staying with someone at the time, and they were searching the neighborhood for a person.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like 4 a.m. in the morning, and they were like bamming on the door, and me and my sister were like, we're asleep. We're like, well, what's going on? Like, what's happening? Because we were sleeping in the living room at the time. And we opened the door. Well, we didn't open the door, but my parents did. And like the police was circling around, like behind the whatever. It was child support, something. I don't know what I don't know why they needed a SWAT team, but I guess that's what it is. But I remember them walking in, seeing them with their vests and their weapons, and my mom the whole time was just standing there like this the whole time, like the entire time. And me and my sister were just kind of like in shock, just kind of like, just standing there. But like my mom was standing there the whole time like this. And like, the entire time the guy was talking to us, asking us questions, whatever, because my mom just had her hands up, like the entire time. And we all just had our hands out, like to be visible, because we were asleep. So me and my sister had like covers on. So like, I didn't know I was frozen, just with fear. And like, they were like, oh, take your hands out. And I'm like, okay, I'm taking my hands out, like, what the case may be. But I was asleep. Like I was asleep. I just woke up in the middle of the night, maybe 4, maybe 3 a.m., so early in the morning. And I could barely get the sleep out of my eyes to realize what was happening. And it's just like the trauma of that experience of like, I could have died that day. Like we could have all just been dead. Like if they just chose, I think he looked a little bit suspicious because
Right.
He got his hands under the cover or something like that. But I was asleep. We were asleep. My mom was terrified. Her hands were up. She's like, listen, he was like, you can put your hands down, man. We were like, oh, are you sure? Like, you positive? Is that okay? And it's just things like that. It makes me wonder often, like, I walk with this fear because they have given me no other reason not to.
Right.
I walk this fear every day. And Daquon, my insurance is correct on my car payments are paid. I make sure I do the speed limit. But every time I get behind that wheel, every time a police officer gets behind me or gets beside me in traffic or whatever, I am petrified.
Right.
I'm like, who do I call? Who do I FaceTime? Who do I live? They'll get on Instagram Live. And if I reach for my insurance, do I need to have it already out? Can I have it taped to my window? Is that safe to do that? Like what, just stuff like that. What were you about to say though?
I was saying that's very real. Like that's an experience. Like even me, like while I'm walking around, when I lived off campus, I walked from my apartment to campus. And I remember walking home times, seeing the police and just like FaceTiming one of my friends or something like that, being like, hey, like, I don't feel safe right now. Just like, you don't have to say anything to me, just stay on the line. Just so like there's somebody there to like
Witness
the story, witness, hear it, know what happens, because oftentimes they will try to spin the story to make us Black people seem like the bad guy. So often you would hear things like, oh, well, like they were doing this illegal thing, they were selling drugs, or, you know, even thinking back to like Trayvon Martin and, you know, people telling stories about him acting out in school and
excusing it.
And I'm like, regardless of what somebody did, that doesn't mean that they should get a death sentence.
And let's speak on that for a moment. Let's go back a little bit to Dylan Roof. And I just want to say that Dylan Roof confirmed killed 9 people with assault grade weapons. And he was walked out in a bulletproof vest. And people oftentimes, when I read an article where people were saying, well, that's standard procedure and blah, 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 blah. And I just want to comment and I just want to say, he was walked out with a bulletproof vest. He stood trial and he is serving right now 9 consecutive life sentences. Now, I want you all to hear me very clearly when I say this. He killed 9 people that the police were aware of. He had a weapon on the person. And he is still alive. George Floyd was accused of using a counterfeit bill. Breonna Taylor was asleep in her home. Aiden was playing music, a little too loud for some white people's taste. These people were doing minute things compared to what Dylan Roof did, and countless other white people that get to stand trial and go to prison.
Right.
Now, we're not sitting here excusing bad actions or illegal activity, but the reality is, selling drugs or whatever the case may be, you deserve a trial. You deserve to go to prison for if it was something worse than that or something like that. But the reality is, you deserve to be taken in to face a jury of your peers. Is that not what the fucking Declaration of Independence, Constitution, all the shit say? I don't know which one. I know it says shit. They say that shit somewhere. It says somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that as a Black person, in comparison, I just want to hold this up real quick, the scale real quick. George Floyd was accused of using a counterfeit bill and 4 officers showed up at the scene. He was held down on his neck for 8 minutes, suffocated, calling out for his mom. Dylan Roof, 9 people dead, and he's still alive in prison. I don't see how the scales line up. Do you see it, Daquon? Am I missing something? Am I unclear?
I think the scale of justice was never balanced. The scales of justice were never balanced in this country. It's always been unequal. We have such a history of systemic violence to Black people and systemic injustices to non-white people in this country that there was never any balance to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So it's infuriating when so many times people try to make excuses of just random things to act like people deserve it. Like, I remember being in a meeting for an organization that I'm a part of, and we were talking about the George Floyd case, and somebody had the audacity to say, well, there's been some news that came out recently that maybe a police officer didn't kill him. Maybe he...
Wait a minute, Daquon. Oh, no. No. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, perfectly fine. Like, it took every fiber of my being not to like completely eviscerate that person. Like, we were on a Zoom call and my face dropped visibly. Like, there was no hiding how I felt after they made that comment. Like, I remember, like, after that comment was made, I completely shut down for like the rest of the conversation because I was like, I can't speak in a room where people will justify the killing of a Black person because, or just like, oh, well, like maybe that didn't, regardless of what that incident should have never happened.
It should have never gone that far.
Right.
And I just want to really talk about the whole excuses that people keep bringing up about the situation.
Right.
That they just feel the urge to just be like, oh well, it's specifically with the situation with the guy holding the bat.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, he was holding a bat. And I just want to say that he was tased, that he
Right.
was on the ground, and he was still shot.
Like, I'm sorry, but from 17 feet away, a bat is not a deadly weapon. Like, you have to be up close to be hit by a bat. Sure, they can throw it, but you can easily dodge that. From 17 feet away, you cannot easily dodge a bullet.
And the scariest thing, I mean, I keep saying this, but it's just, all of it's scary. But if you watch the video, I can't find it anymore. I mean, I watched it one time and it was enough. But the looks on these police officers' faces when they kill someone in cold blood, and you see this look pass over their eyes, recognizing they just snuffed out a life. And the scariest part that I've noticed, Daquon, is that sometimes there is fear in them. And all I can think to myself is, how are you that afraid? I thought that police officers are trained for the most highly dangerous situations, and they're supposed to be, figuring stuff out about the case to be. But I mean, this Black man scares you that much?
Mm-hmm.
That much, Daquon.
Right.
This fear passes over their eyes, and all I can think in my head is this what it was like back in the day, where white slave masters would look at the larger Black men and think, I'm afraid, so I'm going to rape them to make them pay attention, to make them know that I'm the one in charge. I'm going to reassert my power because I feel powerless in this situation because of the stature of this man. And in this situation, it harkens back to me that way, because it's like, it's almost that fear of like, if I let him up, I'll lose something. I'll lose a bit of power that I have over Black people. Does that make sense? Am I making sense? Are you understanding what I'm saying, Daquon?
Yeah, I totally agree. Like,
it's like this fear
aspect of power that's always in everything, that I have to have the authority. This badge gives me power, and you have to respect that.
And it's scary because when you look in their eyes, you can see it's the same little bit of fear that you see in Ku Klux Klan members, or white supremacists. Kind of like, we can't let Black people get anywhere. We can't let Black people just survive because, oh no, they'll take us down, or we're the case. It's always this idea that it's a battle going on, and it's like, these people are just alive. We are just living.
Trying to, at least.
We're trying to, unsuccessfully it seems, but we're just living our life. And Breonna Taylor asleep on her bed, These police officers were, and that's why I want to bring up that fear, because it's always afraid for their life. And I'm like, so a sleeping Black woman was a threat.
Right.
A 19-year-old kid with no weapons. You are that afraid? I mean, Daquon, where do you think that fear comes from? That fear that they have, that if they don't kill them, they're gonna just suddenly gain superpowers or some shit. And just, I mean, like the fuck George Floyd was fucking Superman up in this bitch. He could just, if you let him up for a second to fucking breathe, he gonna fucking crack your neck or some. Apparently, Breonna Taylor got some supernatural powers we don't know about.
Exactly. It all comes back to white supremacy. They are afraid of not being the supreme being. They are afraid of, if we let them live, if we let them survive and they come to thrive, they'll reverse the roles. And I'm like, if reversing the roles is that bad, why are you still enforcing those roles on us?
Oh, okay. Say that one more time for me, Daquon.
If reversing the roles is that bad, why are you still enforcing those roles on us? Because you're recognizing that what you are doing to Black people is bad. And if they did that to you,
it would be bad.
Right.
You have empathy to some extent. You understand that if someone treated you that way. But it goes back to that Jane L.A. quote I brought up in the first episode. When she said, raise your hand if you think Black people are treated differently in this world. And they was like, no, nobody want to raise their hand. She's like, okay, all right. She said, raise your hand if you want to be treated the way that Black people are treated in this world. And bitch, nobody fucking raised their hand because they're not fucking stupid. They know what's going on. Now, I want to ask you, Daquon, it is one of our amendment rights to right to bear arms. Do you feel safe having a weapon on your person at any point in time? No. Bitch, what?
If me listening to music is a threat, imagine having a gun. Imagine.
And I mean, one of my uncles is a gun collector. He loves guns. And I'm just like, in my head, I mean, they're always like, oh, you need to protect yourself. You need to have something to protect you. And I'm kind of like, I understand what you're saying, bro. I really, really do. But in the life that we live in right now, baby, I mean, even if I had even if I had just the permit, like, right. It's just, my whole thing is, Daquon, I know this sounds it might sound however it is, whatever, but I'm gonna say it. But like, I feel like even if I had a weapon in my home or in my car, even if I had the permit, the right documentation, I feel like that gives them an escape to kill me.
Yeah.
Because regardless of where the gun was, if they find a gun, because the reality is police officers do plant guns too, but we're not talking about that right now. But the point is, if I actually had a gun in my house and a police officer came into my house and found said gun or saw me in a threatening position or stance or whatever and decided I'm going to end this Black man's life today because I'm afraid, they have a gun to say, well, he did threaten me. I feared for my life.
That first thing in the report would be like, they were armed.
And it's scary because this is a right. It is literally a right for us to have weapons if we choose to have them. And I am like, bitch, what? Have what weapon? I think the fuck not. Like, I think not. I don't think. Like, I just, it's scary because how do we protect ourselves? Weapon, a gun, none of that shit matters to the police officer.
Right.
You just stand like loud music, sleeping in your bed, using fake money. If that product that some sources say actually was real.
Right.
And you could end up fucking dead, Daquon. Deceased. I want to bring up the anti-masker protest that we saw a few months back.
That riot, because they're quick to call our protests riots.
But they go, bitch. Oh, you're right. That riot. I'm sorry. Excuse my tongue. I do apologize. Yes, that anti-mask riot where they went to the courthouse with weapons, with fully automatic weapons. And Donald Trump, our president at the time, or their president at the time, said, these are just good people.
Mm.
These are just good people wanting to get back to their lives. They just want things to be normal. But when Black people protest, albeit in the beginning, especially peacefully too, because it didn't start off busting shit up, but it started off peacefully. And the first thing that our president has to say about us protesting peacefully without weapons is with the looting starts, the shooting starts. Baby, where was that same energy?
Mm.
I forgot, Daquon. I forgot this.
Right here.
I forgot.
Because it went straight to shooting.
Exist.
It didn't start at tasing. It didn't start at, it was like looting, shooting.
And that's my thing, is that there was no like arrest. There's no like, you will be arrested. There was no, you will be taken. It said gunshot. They
were like, you loot this place, these physical objects that can be replaced is worth more. They're more valuable than your life, which cannot be replaced. That's what that sentence says to me.
And it also says that Donald Trump equates a Black life to an object. That is exactly what he's saying. Because apparently, like you said before, this store, this physical material possession is equal to a Black life. And that is some bullshit.
100%.
And it's the craziest part is that people don't understand. That's why I say that, baby, if you're a Donald Trump supporter, baby, I ain't got nothing to say to you. I ain't got nothing to say to you. Baby, you're a racist. I don't care what you got to say. I didn't know he was, no, baby, I don't give a fuck about none of that. Because you're not dumb. He's been the same man he was. I will say one thing about this motherfucker. He has been consistently racist, okay? Like, that's one thing.
Forever.
Like, he has been consistently racist and consistently an asshole for the entire presidency, even beforehand. So when people say, I did support him at one time, I'm like, baby, if you support him at all, you are anti-women, anti-LGBT, anti-Black. You are a many things. So I just want to ask you, Daquon, moving the discussion back to police brutality. What is the difference between individual prejudice and systemic racism against people of color as it relates to police officers? Do you think there's a difference?
I think when it comes to police officers, the difference comes in, well, no, I don't think there's a difference. I was going to say it comes like when they're in uniform, but also when they're not in uniform, we see the same things. Because at the end of the day, they have that power. They have the power to where so many times they can get away with these things. They can shoot somebody and somebody will be like, well, police they swear to protect and serve, and they were just doing their job, and they know that they can get away with anything, and somebody will be there to back them up. Somebody will be there to be like, Blue Lives Matter. And like last time I checked, like the Smurfs were not real. I don't know of a blue life.
These are fictional characters, baby. And for me, I feel like it's a combination of both. I think that there is obvious systemic racism that pressures the police system. But I also believe there is individual prejudice that plays a part into it. Because the reality is, go ahead.
I just said, yeah.
Oh, yeah. But it's individual prejudice because of the fact that there are, unfortunately, circles in which there are people who push these agendas, racist agendas. And I feel like what people don't know is that a long time ago, I don't know when this was specifically, correct me if I'm wrong, Daquon, but the Ku Klux Klan said that they were going to infiltrate police systems, doctors, lawyers. They were going to spread out so as to defeat Black people in a new way, in a way that's a little bit more covert, and a little more undercover. And as we're looking at the situations that we've seen and the stuff that's going on, I completely believe that this is a reality. Because the unfortunate truth is, you yourself may not be fully racist, but you hear it, you take in shit that you hear from around you. And if one or two of your police officers going like, yeah, the Black people, they fucking blah, 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 they fuck this and the fourth, they always this or they always that, you internalize that shit.
Right.
Unknowingly, unconsciously, you're internalizing it. So you may not start off hating Black people. You may not start off wanting to think that Black people are more aggressive. But in that particular environment, in that pressure cooker that I believe is the police force, because you're dealing with stuff every single day.
Right.
And you're hearing stuff from your superiors, from your coworkers, from all these other people, these different alarms and shit that go, the little, the little communication things that tell you what's happening, what's going on, a Black violence, this Black violence, that Black, or whatever the case may be, especially if you're a police officer in a more urban community.
Exactly.
So I believe that all of those things influence individual prejudice. So when they go out and they see this Black man, they faced 3 or 4 different Black men who were maybe drug dealers and maybe violent, or whatever the case may be. And so they automatically assume and stereotype every Black person as that violent person. Yet when it relates to white people, because there's more narrative of mental health when it comes to when it comes to white people, there's a narrative that they basically are like, Black people don't have mental health, apparently. We just don't, I guess we all just fuck perfect out here. But when it relates to white people, you hear it's like, oh, a disgruntled man, or a blah, 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 or he's a disturbed. But when you hear about a Black person on these police communicators, it's, oh, a violent, he's getting angry, he's aggressive, he's just in the fourth. When they found out he's Black and they put all those qualifiers on it, he is aggressive, he is a threat. So I believe it's a combination of both of those things that make it's a problem within the police force, because there is so much going on, and there's even in the dialogue that they have between each other and on the communicators and all this other stuff, all of that stuff pulls into this narrative that the Black man will always be the problem. The Black woman will always be the problem in the situation, regardless of what's actually happening.
Right. Because individual prejudice and systemic racism are 2 peas in a pod when it comes to police brutality. And even in like this socialization of seeing Blackness as criminal or violent or aggressive, I would even argue, like, even if somebody who is in the police force that doesn't necessarily, subconsciously takes on the perspective, even if you aren't necessarily prejudiced as an individual, if you are not actively speaking out against these instances, you are just as bad, because you are being complacent and you are letting things pass through.
And let's be real clear on this. I want y'all to hear us as well. Complacency is participation.
Exactly.
It is just as bad as if you pull the trigger yourself.
Because if we look at so many of these instances, there are multiple police officers at these scenes. And even if they are not the ones pulling the trigger, they let that trigger be pulled. They didn't say anything. They didn't see that and be like, hey, no, we're not going to do that. It happened.
And that's what I was saying, that George Floyd thing, there were 4 officers there. And they were all of them are looking over and seeing this guy with his foot, his knee in this man's throat. And they said nothing. They did nothing. And a man is dead. A man is dead because you chose to do nothing. apathy is worse than hate.
Say it again.
Apathy is worse than hate because at least hate is obvious.
Right.
At least hate is an emotion that can possibly change or possibly be repaired. But apathy, not giving a fuck, that's worse. Because you're saying, baby, if somebody dies, oh man, it doesn't matter to me, baby. My check gonna clear either way. That's basically what you're saying. Right. And I just want to ask you, Daquon, do you believe that do you believe in this commentary that the police force only has a few bad apples?
No. Like, even if there's a few bad apples that actually do it, there's so many more that are complacent and let it happen.
I want to do this thing. I don't know if people know this, but if you put a spoiled banana or a spoiled apple or something that's ghastly, dead, spoiled, rotten, and you put it in a dish full of ripe, fresh, whatever apples, right? That spoil will spread through those other apples quickly.
Right.
Quickly. And that is how I see the police force, is that if there are a few bad apples, then baby, the whole litter's rotten. The tree is fucked.
Because it spreads.
It spreads fast. Baby, the tree is fucked up. The tree is fucked up from the roots. So when people say that whole narrative of, oh, it's a few, and I remember this, Chris Rock in his Tambourine special said this joke that really got to me and kind of solidified the whole argument about a few bad apples. And what the joke was, and it's in his comedy special Tambourine on Netflix. And what he says at the end of the thing, we talk about police brutality, he's like, there are just certain jobs where you can't have a few bad apples.
Right.
You're not gonna go on a plane in deltas like some of our pilots land and feel anywhere near safe. And that spoke to me because there are just you can't have doctors like, well, some of our doctors save our patients. There's a few bad ones in there. And it's like, baby, if there's 9 doctors in that building who fucking people up, baby, the whole building's fucked. Baby.
Right. And let's be real.
The whole building away.
Let's be real. These few bad apples, quote unquote, have a big impact. Even if we look at 2020, out of the entire year, a whole 300 something days, there were 16 days where police didn't kill somebody. 16 out of this entire year.
Now let that sink in.
But there's only a few bad apples.
Daquon, there's only a few. It's only a few. It's not all bad. And honestly and truly, hearing that statistic, hearing that, it's just like, wow. Like, what? 16 days?
Right.
And it's just like, where do you think the line of self-defense and police brutality is? Because the line seems to keep getting skewed.
It's gone all over the place.
That shit ain't no fucking line. That shit is just that shit is a fucking squiggle or something. That is just a point. I don't know what it is. It's not the fuck right. It's all I know. But where do you think the line is, Daquon, of self-defense and police brutality? Where is it?
I think if we look at society, I don't think there is one.
Ooh.
Because so many instances where somebody has not proved to be an actual threat. They're like, oh, self-defense. Like, I felt threatened. And it's like, it always seems a viable defense that, like, if somebody who is asleep dies, like, somebody is threatening you in their sleep, explain to me.
I'm telling you, Daquon, she got some voodoo. She must got some powers that we don't know about. She must. She must got some powers we don't know about it. They didn't report in the case, apparently. The way these fucking police officers keep trying to defend themselves about it. And the fact of Daquon, what really pisses me off is look how long it took to arrest the officers. And I don't think all of them are still arrested even now, are they?
No clue.
And it's like, they're still working? Like, they're not in jail?
Listen, some of these times they kill somebody and then get a paid vacation.
And they get to come back to the work, clock in, and still kill people.
Excuse me? Like, paid leave for killing somebody. Like, I'm sorry, but like, in any other job, that would be you're fired. Or so many other sanctions rather than, oh, you messed up, but like, we're gonna pay you to just like step down for a bit until things settle down, and then like you can live your life.
Baby, let me tell you something. Doctors, let someone the fuck down their hands. Baby.
They will lose their license so
baby,
quick.
Malpractice suit like a motherfucker. And that's just for one person. If one person files a malpractice suit against a doctor and wins, baby, your career is pretty much dead. Just like that person you killed.
Right.
So I just want to know, and I had mentioned this in my video about police brutality on my channel. Why is there not a board? Like, I don't know how the police system works, but I feel like there should be a checks and balances system.
It doesn't work.
I mean, we gonna get to that. We gonna get to that. But I'm just saying, why is there not a bitch? That shit hit me right there. They call you better, bitch. But where is the board? Right. Where is the person who checks behind police? Are they like, oh, it just falls through the cracks, falls through the cracks, falls through the cracks? And I'm kind of like, bitch, all this fucking money y'all got, y'all can't hire somebody to be like, I need to see all your cases for this week.
Right.
I need to see all your cases for anybody who has died or has been beaten or I need to see all of them now. And I need to review them. It needs to be somebody who is not a police officer.
Exactly. Because
I need somebody, go ahead.
If you're a doctor, you have to go to med school, do all these things, take all these exams. But police officer training is not a standardized thing. All these different precincts do it differently, varying time limits. Like, you don't even need a degree in criminal justice sometimes. Like, you have so many varying different training schedules. And even in some training, they spend more time learning how to use a firearm than like de-escalation practices. And that's how you see how this system does not work, because instantly you're like, okay, fire, not de-escalate, fire.
And that's what I'm saying, Daquon. Like, where is, like, I'm sorry, when you find people who deal directly with people's livelihoods, doctors, plane people, school bus driver, I think to a certain extent even, and what was I about to say? And like all these people in these different career paths, even that's what I was gonna say, psychiatry. When I was thinking about being a psychiatrist, it said I would have to go through the general ed school degrees, and I would actually have to go to medical school because I'm being trained and I'm being able to prescribe medication to people. So I need to know how the brain works, how the body works, and how certain medications will affect certain people. And I'm like, most career paths where you have to deal with a person's livelihood, maybe not bus driver so much, but airplane, bigger, more specific things. When you're dealing with someone's livelihood, there's qualifications in place that you have to pass, not just standards and practices. There's training before you even get to be on a plane yourself. There is so many steps that you have to take to be able to deal with a person's life. And we don't do that same stringent policy on people who are supposed to protect human life.
Right.
I'm sorry, baby. I would much rather have a police officer who has been trained by a school system or a college system that has taught them what things they should or shouldn't be doing, how they're supposed to work, psychiatry, some psychology stuff that they might have to get through, some other stuff to help them understand what the fuck they're doing. Bitch,
some
fuck.
sociology in there to understand how societies work.
We need somebody. Let's go ahead and jump into this right now. What kind of training measures, if there are any, do you think should be implemented to help the police force become better, if you believe it can be? Like if we had to do hypothetically, what would you do to fix it?
I mean, if we're fixing the police force, I think that it starts with cutting down on the need for a police force. So like even thinking, there are so many countries where their like traffic authorities are unarmed and it's a separate thing from their police. There are so many places, like even in the United States, where they have community care people who are actually in the community that can be called to deal with situations, maybe like of trespassing or noise complaints or something like that. Because like even if we think about like the police that like protect and serve our communities, a lot of times they are not from the communities that they are serving, so they don't have that connection to the community to like care about it more. Or even just like so many places where when you have instances of mental health crises, like that is the work of a social worker. That is somebody who can understand how the brain works, because sad to say, there are so many mental health crises where the police are called and the person is killed and their mental health crisis is not dealt with. That could have totally been avoided. So I think like in reframing how we think of police, we need to reframe what is the role of police in our society, and is there somebody already who is better trained to do that role?
And that is why I completely and totally agree with you. And for me, I feel like it goes back to the idea of full-fledged training. I feel like weapon training should be the last thing that a police officer is trained on, because it should be the last resort, the absolute last resort. That should not be one among the first. No, baby. All that self-defense, fuck all of that shit. We're going to learn all of that at the last time, because that is the last thing you need to be knowing about. That is the last thing you need to know how to do. So I feel like police officers should have to be required to take a few psychology courses and sociology courses and a few courses on de-escalation, like you said. There should be an entire subject dedicated to that.
They need to learn their history. Learn the history of where police came from. The first police patrols of this country and what they were made for.
And I feel like most definitely, and I feel like this should be across all police forces, but I feel like there should be a course that they take just before they get their weapons about prejudice. And I mean, I want them to go in. I want a group intensive therapy with the police officers just before they go to train with their weapons and shit, to say, y'all need to confront all that racist bullshit that you have been taught by our racist society. Let's talk about this shit. Let's go through some videos. How would you have handled this situation? Why would you have handled it that way? If he was white, would it have been different? Like, really? And I mean, I'm talking about a licensed, trained therapist. And I want it easy, kind of like, oh, well, how do you feel? No, I want that motherfucker to go in, go off, get that shit up out them. I want you to tear that shit out. Like, and there are intensive therapy treatments like that. Retreats where they, like the therapists are very upfront, very direct, and get straight to the point. They open that wound up, baby, let it bleed a little bit.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying, because it has to hurt. It has to hurt for it to get better. So in order for you to confront your internal prejudice, you have to be confronted with it. You have to be willing to go there. And I feel like so many of these police officers are not confronting their internal prejudice. They're not confronting the internalized racism they have gotten from their school systems, from their daily lives, from their raising, from their parents, all that stuff. And I feel like before you fucking train with a weapon, self-defense, all that other bullshit, there needs to be at least a month treatment with you and your fellow officers, with videos and confrontations and talking and saying, if I ran up on you right now, what would you do? What would your first thought be? If a white man ran up to you just now, or if a black man ran up to you just now, what would be your first thought? What would be your first action? And like really get in deep in that shit. I want some tears, bitch. I want them crying. Because I feel like that is the only way, if we're talking about fixing, that is the only way that we're going to be able to help the police force get better, is to force them to confront it, because it's always the same fucking excuse I hear, mostly from white people or white cops in the videos and shit. It's kind of like, we are not this people. We are not bad people, and I'm not going to let y'all vilify us and whine, cry. The victim doesn't work on you, baby. But the victim card, you can't play it. But it frustrates me, because I'm kind of like, y'all don't even see that you just saying what you just said is racist.
The craziest part, the instance that like infuriated me the most was, I'm an RA at my college. To be an RA, like when you become an RA, a part of your training is a mental health course to be able to recognize through a mental health crisis. And there was an instance at my residence hall where we had to get the police involved. And one of my fellow RAs, asked the police, what kind of training you get to like distinguish whether this is like a mental health crisis or something else. And the officer said, oh, that's not our job. We don't get trained to do that. That's for somebody else after we bring that person in. And I was like, I'm an RA making like $100-something a month.
Good question.
And I got trained to recognize, like maybe not intervene in certain, like it's being able to like recognize and like provide resources and like help them get to like particular specialty training. So like I am not the end all be all, like I do not solve their mental health crisis. I help them to be like, hey, I recognize this, maybe you can go to these resources. But for somebody who gets a whole entire salary, that has a web, like that is an officer, for you to just be like, it's not our jobs, we don't get trained to recognize those things, that's for somebody else to do after they get taken in. And I'm like, so many times people don't get taken in, and that's the problem.
I am in shock right now, Daquon. No, actually, no, I'm not. Why am I gonna lie like that? Why am I lying, Why am I lying, Daquon?
Because you want to be like, you want this to be shocking. You want to be like, oh my gosh, I never. But the sad truth is,
it's in with all the money they've got in this police force for all these fucking weapons they're buying. But there is not. And how long was your course, if you don't mind me asking? The course you had to take?
It was like a 6-hour training, so like it wasn't extensive, but it was still a training.
But the facts is,
I'm an RA.
You are, and that's what I'm saying. Like that's why I had to tell. That's why I had this when I aim to interrupt you earlier. When I was like, "Are you serious?" Because I just couldn't believe that you had to get trained for that. It makes sense, obviously.
Right.
But I'm like, you had to get trained to deal with mental health, and you're a RA. You don't have no fucking gun. You don't have no fucking taser, no baton, no stun gun, none of that shit. But you are trained. And I'm like, and our police officers, serve and protect. Again, what I think people can get misconstrued is that there are not de-escalation phone numbers to call. There are not a task force, like you were saying, that's dedicated to trespassing and disturbances. There is not this person has mental health issues, call this number. If this person is struggling with they have a bat in their hand, they're saying weird shit, call this person. There is not a line for that. It's always 911.
anytime there's an emergency, no matter what it is, we're always taught, call 911. The police are supposed to 911. The police are supposed to handle everything, and that is not a working system.
And that is what I found, for them to have this much responsibility with almost, I mean, the not even bare minimum qualifications. It's like me going, I want to be a doctor today. I think I can do open heart surgery. I think I can fly a plane. I can fly a plane if I just watch one little YouTube video. I can fly a plane. I can be responsible for human life. I'm trained for it.
Just teach me how to use the scalpel and stuff. I don't need to learn how the heart actually works.
Listen, fuck all that talking to the people before they do that. Let me just go ahead and cut this shit up. Let me just go ahead and figure this shit out. Like, and it's just bad because, you know, even doctors are taught bedside manner. Like, that's a required course for them.
Right.
To know how to talk to their patients. And our police officers not even given not even a fucking 6-hour fucking course. It's not their job. I don't think. So I just want to ask you quick, Daquon, because I know what I feel, but do you feel that the race of a police officer matters?
No. I think so many, like, I think there's so many times that, like, regardless of who I see in that uniform stands for itself in terms of how I feel. I think, like, even the crazy part is just, like, coming to Emory and, like, talking to people who have different educational experiences. Like, I was talking to people and they were like, y'all had police in your schools? And I was like, yeah, that's a normal thing. Like, we have over policing in our communities. We have police in our schools. We are constantly under surveillance as Black people, which teaches us that there's some reason we need to be surveilled. We're some danger to society. And, like, regardless,
we're animals. It's a zoo. We're animals, yeah.
Right. And regardless of who was taking that role, they were still taking the same role in my eyes.
In the eyes of a police officer, Black people are animals, and I feel that your race does not matter the fuck at all to me. I don't give a shit if you're Black. I don't give a shit if you damn chocolate, like definitely Black. I don't give a fuck if you African and a police officer. I don't give two shits about none of that shit. None of it. Because in my eyes, and me and my mom I talked about it with her, and she kind of was like, no, Quay, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, Mama, I'm sorry. All police officers are bad. And when I first heard that, it was Shea Coulee, a bad bitch, resident bad bitch in charge. She said it was an Instagram post, and it was like on Twitter, it was all cops are bad. And when I first saw it, I was like, oh God, like, no, not all. And then I was like, wait a minute. I had to think about it. I was like, she fucking right. Because the reality is, there were Black slave catchers. There were Black slave owners. Baby, the color of your skin does not determine whether or not you give a fuck about people or your people or none of that shit. The reality is, in my opinion, the police force as a whole is corrupt. The police force as a whole is corrupt. So regardless of who is wearing the uniform, they are corrupt. And it's unfortunate to say that because I know there are police officers out there who genuinely do believe they can make some change. They genuinely want to help people. I am not saying there are not police. Hear me clearly. I am not saying that there are not police officers who genuinely do give a fuck about Black people and don't try to look at their through the eyes of prejudice. But the reality is, the system as a whole is corrupt. To me, and I'm gonna ask you this question as well once I finish my point here, but to me, the police force cannot be salvaged. It can't be saved. There is no courses that we can implement because the reality is it's too far gone. The blood, the wound is it's dead. They dead. They dead. And we have put a gauze on it once. We have tried to wrap the bandage once, but they're just bleeding everywhere else. We tried to save it for years. We have tried to yell for years. We are fighting for years. In 2020, we are still fighting to just have them recognize that not all Black people are trying to kill you. Not all Black people are a threat. Baby, the body is dead. The body is dead. There is when George Floyd, when Aiden Ellis, when all these people died this year, and the people that we still don't know about, and the fact that people are still calling the police, and people are still being beaten, still being taken advantage of, all of this stuff, baby, it's all fucked up. It's all fucked up, baby. I'm sorry. And I'm not gonna be sitting there trying to separate the little pieces of grain. Basically, it's like somebody telling us to throw rice on here, mix a whole bunch of rice together and separate it by color or some shit. Right. Anybody got time for all that? Trying to find a needle in a haystack. Who the fuck?
Right.
So I want to ask you, Daquon, do you believe that the police force can be salvaged? Do you believe there's any kind of saving force for it?
Not really. Like, I think all of my answers are no at this time. But like, just being honest, like a study has been done that in the past 60 years, there have been no correlation between increasing the funding for police departments and decreasing crime. Like there has been no significant correlation between the two. Police force and our entire just like justice system entirely is not the effective thing that it's claimed to be. Like I said before, there are so many other people who are actually trained to do the things especially in all of these violent cases. Like if police are called, call them for like a extremely violent case where like don't call police for a mental health crisis when a social worker can do that job even better. So yeah, regardless of how much money you put into the police system to try to like build it back up and like salvage it, like we've seen for the past 60 years that putting more money into that doesn't help. And I think it's also telling that you put so much money into, incarcerating people. You can put more money
not rehabilitating,
incarcerating, because our carceral system does not rehabilitate people.
And baby, that's an episode by itself.
Right. But we could be putting so much more money into actually rehabilitating people, actually preventative measures, focusing on community care, education, mental health services, domestic violence services. Like all of these things should be implemented into our communities, and they should be from people in those communities, because I'm sorry, but if you do not grow up in a place, you're never going to fully understand people from that place. Like there are certain ways that people move in a community that like if you are not from that community, you won't understand. And if you are not in dialogue to really see what the community needs, you're just actively harming them by imposing your idea of what that community should look like, when in reality, that community can never look like that and should never look like that and doesn't want to ever look like that.
And I want to say to you something that I heard from someone at work yesterday. And she said that a while back, her sister-in-law or somebody in her family, her and her husband were having like a little tiff, like just, arguing back and forth. Her husband was drunk, she was arguing. Apparently there were no blows taken, like nobody hit anybody, it was just argument. And she called the police on him just because she wanted to. And she went to sleep after she called the police. And the police got there and they assessed the situation, and it was a Black police officer that came to her, and he was like, wake your ass up. And she was like, oh, okay. And he said just like that, apparently, he said he was like, listen, let me tell you something. He said, if we had been any other police officer, your husband would have been dead. And I said, and because when the lady said it, I was like, he said that to her? She was like, yes. He said, if he were any other police officer, you got lucky that we were Black and that we know this neighborhood. and we didn't see anything wrong with the situation. But had we been any other police officer, you might have woke up a widow.
Mm.
And when she told me that story, it sent chills down my spine. Because just as Jane Elliott said, even they know that's a problem in the system.
Right.
Even the police officers know there's a problem. They don't talk about it often. I'm pretty sure he's not gonna go on Instagram or go on Facebook or something and talk about that shit, but he told her that. And that story got to me. And I'm telling y'all right now, they're not fucking stupid. Online, they might be all, well, we are, blah, 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 blah. But behind closed doors, when they think, when no cameras are not rolling, they're not talking to nobody, they tell you the reality. And the reality is they know what the fuck is happening. They know what's going on.
It's impossible not to. You see it so 16 days in this entire year. They know what's going on. They see it every single day.
And it was just hearing that story, Daquon, was just so scary. Because it's kind of like, you don't even know what you just did. You could have cost your husband his life tonight.
Right.
For an argument that wasn't even violent. And even there are so many Black people who say, you don't ever call the police. I don't give a shit what is happening. You found your way the fuck out of there.
Right.
You don't call them. She said that her mom is definitely afraid of them. She's like, she said, if you call the police, baby, you don't come to my house no more. Like that, on that type of shit.
Right. One time I called 911, it was for a fire. That's it.
That's it. That's it. So honestly, just the reality is, y'all, they don't shoot to maim Black people. They shoot to kill. I have not heard. I just want to know why George, if they were going, if Aiden got shot, why he didn't get shot in his leg? Why did he be the chest?
Right.
Why the death blow, Daquon?
They get shoot center mass.
Why his leg ain't shot or something like that? Why wasn't it a graze? I'm pretty sure if you get shot in your fucking leg, you're gonna sit your ass the fuck down.
Right.
I'm pretty sure. You get shot in your arm, that shit don't feel good, I'm sure. Your ass probably gonna be on the ground in a second. So it just baffles me that
tased and already barely able to stand.
Stunned, tased. And these people are just like, no, chest, heart, head, that's it, on period. I'm like, what? So the reality is, all I want to leave y'all with today, for me, is who do we call to protect us?
Mm.
Who? Who do we call when someone's breaking into our house? And we don't have a weapon because we're too afraid that a police officer might show up and might catch us with the weapon. Who do we call when we're in our own home? Somebody's key somehow opens our door, and this woman believes that this is her apartment and shoots us, kills us in our own apartment, because that did happen.
Mm-hmm.
Or we are asleep in our bed thinking that we're just safe and having a good time, sleep, and fucking dead now. Or we just happen to use a bill that we thought was real that happened to be counterfeit, or whatever the case may be, or whatever the fuck the story is, and we get fucking choked to death. Who do we call? Or when we're playing music, having a good time at a hotel, apparently, and we're dead now at 19, not even fully lived a full life yet. Who do we call? Daquon?
Definitely not the police.
So I want to talk about this season of the Melanin Margin and what it means to both of us and what we have done so far. Because if you guys didn't already know, this is our season finale. So Daquon, what has Melanin Margin done for you so far?
A whole lot. Like these conversations are some of the most important conversations to be having And these are conversations that I don't know of anybody else I can have these conversations with. Like, there are conversations like I've wanted to have for so long, and there's so many people that just like are so uncomfortable having these conversations, even though they are so
necessary,
important. And, you know, I just think like this episode of police brutality, like this is what sparked this entire podcast, this entire season. So like this is the fitting end for this season, because these conversations are never going to be easy. Like this conversation right here was fire, but ooh.
It was a lot. For
Right.
me, Melanin Margin it's a space where I can be unapologetically Black.
Mm.
It is a space where I'm able to voice my Black voice clearly, honestly, and without someone trying to silence me. It's a show dedicated to bringing the marginalized to the motherfucking spotlight, okay? And the craziest part of this whole show is that the reason we created it was because there was no other show like it that we'd seen. People had these conversations once, a few times, or maybe on their channel once or twice, or whatever the case may be. And I had the conversation on my channel by myself once or twice. And I was like, Black people, the Black issues that survive in our society need to be discussed. In hour-long discussions, in actual getting into the grind of it.
Right.
Hearing from differing opinions and stuff, figuring stuff out, healing from it.
Because let's be transparent, like this podcast started as like these race conversations were originally going to be like 20 to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And we quickly realized that like that's not enough time to have.
It's not enough time.
It's never. We started our first episode, our little pilot thing, and we went
off. We were like, okay, it's going to be 30 minutes long. It's going to be just about this amount of time. We're going to figure it out. Bitch, by the time I'm like, damn, shit, it's not, wait a minute. I look at the clock. Oh, we've been talking for an hour.
Right.
But it's because when you get into that stuff, that's why, because we originally wanted to bank episodes when we started. We wanted to bank them and like do more than two, or the case would be, at a time. And we realized around the second week when we were like, these conversations deserve our undivided attention. They deserve a week of preparation. They deserve a week of getting our thoughts together, gathering our emotions, gathering the stuff that we want to talk about, really gathering ourselves.
Cultivating our energy.
To give these. So, Daquon, let me ask you, what was the most controversial topic that we talked about on here? Or was there ever a conversation that you were kind of hesitant to have?
Oh, I think all of the topics should not be controversial.
Ooh.
They should be things that we are actively talking about all the time. Like, I'm not going to lie and say like there wasn't any hesitation at all in any of the topics, because I think every topic can be controversial in some sense. But I like the thing that I keep in mind at the end of the day is that I am convicted in my ideals, and like these are things that I fully believe in, and I fully believe in like the human rights of us as Black people. We need human rights and civil rights, and I am advocating for that. So if it's coming across as controversial to anybody, obviously that's somebody that doesn't have my humanity in mind.
Bitch. Every time, bitch. For me, I have to say, the conversation to me that was the most controversial, or the most one that I kind of feared doing, was the fallen stars of the Black community.
Mm.
I was very hesitant about that one because I didn't know how you were going to react when we were doing it. Because mind you, we don't really discuss much of what we're going to say in the episode until we actually say it. So
Right.
like we give a little bit of a talk beforehand and we kind of get ourselves situated, but we kind of just don't really know what we're going to say until we say it on episode.
We
It's not
want
like
to have
planned out.
honest reactions.
Yeah. So I was like, oh God, like if we, cause I'm like, I was like, damn, I'm talking about Michael Jackson, R. Kelly, like Bill, like especially Michael Jackson. I was like, fuck, like I really hope that we don't end up in the show after this. I was scared, Daquon. I was scared. And I don't know why. I mean, I know you spiritually. I'm connected, so I know you. So I thought we were going to be on the same page. But there was to that part of me that was like, shit. Bit. What if he actually is rooting for this nigga? I'm like, damn, this gonna be a real difficult one right here. But so I want to say, what was one of your favorite conversations? Like one of the episodes. What was one of the ones you were like, oh damn.
Ooh, I think one of my favorite conversations was probably the Black community and LGBT. Like that conversation went in. Like so many, like I would say like the entire season was fire, but especially like these past 3-4 episodes, like if you missed them, go back and watch them because
please do. My favorite, hands down, I have to say honestly, that my favorite one was the same. Because the Black community and the LGBT community, I mean, that hit home for me really hard. And the stuff that we discussed, I mean, especially going to the religious stuff that we talked about, I mean, it was so therapeutic. It was so just, it was nice to be able to talk with a person who understood where I was coming from and where I was coming with that. And it was like, you know, to be really honest and like really raw about my emotions and about my fear and about the things that I dealt with and stuff like that. It was really an amazing conversation. And like we said, this whole season was great. Please watch them. They were this is an intro. This is great. But like that episode right there really kind of set the tone for me. Like it was like this person understands. You understand. I understand where I'm coming from. We were able to have that. So the last question I want to ask you right here: what was the most transformative, as the gaggiest moment from our either co-hosts, like that you said or that you heard me say? You were like, "Oh, bitch."
Ooh. It has to be one of the hashtags. Like the hashtags that we had this season, I think it really came down to just like, I think the two that I think about is like us talking about like white supremacy being the root of everything. Because like, I think you think about like, I've thought about that before, but to like say it and like actually speak through it, transformative. But also appreciating from a distance. That will always stick with me.
That's gonna be on a t-shirt, bitch. For me, I have to say it was the discussion when we talked about the Black community in the sense of it was, God, I'm about to say it. I know where it's on the tip of my tongue. Wait a minute. It was the conversation we had a few episodes back where I was like, I don't understand why the Black community is like this, sort of the case may be. I don't understand why we are, you know, so stringent on like the LGBT episode. That was the one. Here we go. I found it. And you were like, it's because that's all we were taught at that time. It was because that was what it was. It was the reality. It was, we were afraid. And I was like, bitch, what? When you said we were afraid because being masculine, it takes away from the Black experience because white people are seen as this and Black people are seen as that. And when you said that shit, it clicked for me in a way that I never got before. Because I was like, why are we so stringent against gay men or feminine men or whatever the case may be? And it was like you said, it was because of the fact that it is a threat. It is a threat to the image of a Black man. And I said, bitch, you motherfucking better. You motherfucking better.
Literally all of the isms. All of the isms and phobias link back to white supremacy. Misogyny, sexism, race, all of it goes back to white supremacy.
So guys, I think this is it for this year. We are done with the Melanin Margin season 1. We will see you guys next year. For the last time right now, I am Quaviondre Williams.
And I'm Daquon Wilson.
And thank you guys so much for a great season of the Melanin Margin. We really appreciate all the likes, all the views, the comments. We really, really appreciate it. Keep watching. We will see you guys next year. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for joining us.
Same.
This has been amazing. Daquon?
And remember to like keep this conversation going. Go in the comments, talk about what your favorite moments from the season was. How do you feel about police brutality? Like, engage with us. Also, you know, follow us on Instagram. Comment down below ideas you have for next season. Or
yes.
Like even you can even DM me.
DM us.
Like, be like, hey, I love this episode. I want you to talk about this. Like, keep this conversation going.
Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it. We will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.